Found out my parents had another son. They gave away when I was 2 because he had special needs. He contacted me through DNA testing site, asking why they kept me but not him. Then I learned they'd been sending money to his adoptive parents while telling me we were too poor for college and I had to take out massive loans. I was mindlessly scrolling through my DNA matches on a Tuesday afternoon when I saw it. A close family first cousin match with 25% shared DNA. The name was Daniel Mitchell. I didn't recognize it. My finger hovered over the message notification. One new message from Daniel Mitchell. I almost didn't open it. I wish I hadn't. I wish I could go back to the version of myself that existed 5 minutes before I clicked that button. The version who still believes she knew her own family. Hi, the message began. I know this is going to sound strange, but I think you might be my sister. My adoptive parents told me I was adopted when I was 7, and I've been searching for my biological family for years. According to this site, we share 25% DNA, which means we're either half-siblings or possibly full siblings. My birth date is March 15th, 1998. I was born in St. Mary's Hospital in Portland. Does any of this mean anything to you? My hands started shaking. March 15th, 1998. I was born in November 1999. We weren't the same age, but we were close. And St. Mary's Hospital. That's where I was born too, where my parents still live, where I'd grown up. I read the message 3 more times, my heart hammering against my ribs. This had to be a mistake. My parents would have told me if I had a brother, wouldn't they? But 25% shared DNA didn't lie. I spent the next 2 hours diving into genetic genealogy forums, trying to understand what I was looking at. The consensus was clear. 25% shared DNA, barring any unusual circumstances, meant full sibling, not half full. My parents had another child, a son, born when I was about 1.5 years old, and they'd never mentioned him, not once, not in 26 years. I didn't respond to Daniel right away. Instead, I did what any rational person discovering they have a secret brother would do. I tore apart my parents' house when they were at work. I still had a key from college. Mom always insisted I keep it, just in case. I'd never imagined just in case would mean just in case you need to investigate whether your entire life is a lie. The house was exactly as I remembered it. The same floral couch in the living room, the same family photos on the mantle. Photos of me at every age. Gap-toothed at 6, awkward at 13, proud in my high school graduation gown. No photos of anyone else. Just me, the only child, except I wasn't. I started in the basement, pulling boxes from shelves with shaking hands, old tax returns, Christmas decorations, my childhood artwork carefully preserved in a plastic bin. Nothing. Then I found it, shoved in the back of my dad's filing cabinet in his home office, a manila folder labeled Daniel, important. Inside were documents that would reshape my entire understanding of my family. Adoption papers, dated May 2000. Daniel James Thompson, my parents' surname, relinquished to Mark and Patricia Mitchell. Reason for adoption. Birth parents unable to care for child with special needs. Child diagnosed with Down syndrome. Down syndrome. They'd given him away because he had Down syndrome. My stomach lurched. I thought about my parents, who'd always seemed like good people. My dad coached Little League. My mom volunteered at the animal shelter. They'd raised me with love and attention. They'd taught me to be kind, to help others, to never judge people for things they couldn't control. And they'd given away their son because he had Down syndrome. But the documents didn't stop there. Underneath the adoption papers were bank statements, dozens of them, going back 20 years. Every single month, my parents had sent a check to Mark and Patricia Mitchell. The amounts varied, sometimes $500, sometimes $1,000. Occasionally $2,000. In the last few years, the payments had increased to $2,500 monthly. I did quick mental math. Over 20 years, they'd sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to Daniel's adoptive parents. The folder slipped from my numb fingers, papers scattered across the hardwood floor, and I just stared at them, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. Because 4 years ago, when I'd been accepted to my dream college, my parents had sat me down at the kitchen table, this very table I was standing next to now, and told me with tears in their eyes that they couldn't help me with tuition. Money was too tight, they'd said. They were so sorry. I'd have to take out loans if I wanted to go. I'd believed them. I'd taken out $120,000 in student loans. I'd worked 2 jobs through college, studying late into the night after closing shifts at the campus library and weekend doubles at a restaurant. I'd eaten ramen for dinner more times than I could count. Had skipped social events because I couldn't afford the cover charge, had worn the same 3 outfits for 2 years because I couldn't justify buying new clothes. And the whole time, my parents had been sending $2,500 a month to the son they'd never told me about. I was still sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers, when my phone rang. Mom, I declined the call. She called again. Then Dad called. I turned my phone face down and focused on breathing. How do you confront your parents about something like this? What words exist for this conversation? I carefully photographed every document, then put them back exactly as I'd found them. I locked up the house and drove home in a daze, nearly running a red light, because I couldn't stop thinking about a little boy with Down syndrome being handed over to strangers, because he wasn't perfect enough to keep. That night, I finally responded to Daniel's message. Hi, Daniel. Yes, I think you're right. I think I'm your sister. My name is Emma Thompson. I just found out about you today. I didn't know you existed until I saw your message. I have a lot of questions, and I'm guessing you do too. Would you be willing to talk on the phone? His response came within minutes. Yes. God, Yes, I've been waiting so long for this. Here's my number. I called him immediately. Emma? His voice was warm, slightly high-pitched in the way that's common with Down syndrome. You're really my sister? I think so, I said. And then, because I was apparently crying now, yes, I am. I always wanted a sister, Daniel said, and the simple joy in his voice broke something in. My parents, my adoptive parents, Mark and Patricia, they're really good to me. But I always wondered about my biological family, why I was adopted, if I had any brothers or sisters, if my birth parents ever thought about me. Daniel, I said carefully, what do your parents, Mark and Patricia, what have they told you about your adoption? Just that my birth parents were really young and couldn't take care of a baby with special needs, he said. They said it wasn't because they didn't love me, but because they wanted me to have a better life. Mark and Patricia have been great. Dad's a physical therapist, and he really helped me with my motor skills when I was little. Mom taught special education before she retired. They always made me feel wanted. I closed my eyes. At least there was that. At least he'd had a good life. Did they ever mention— I struggled with how to ask this. Did they ever say anything about your birth parents staying in contact or helping financially? There was a pause. Yeah, actually. They told me my birth parents sent money to help with my care. They said it showed how much my birth parents cared even though they couldn't raise me themselves. Why? Did you find out something else? I told him everything. About finding the documents, about the money, about the college loans, about the fact that our parents had kept me and raised me but given him away, about the fact that they'd never, not once, mentioned his existence to me. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Daniel, I'm here. His voice had changed. Flat. They had another baby? Right after me? And they kept that baby? I'm so sorry, I whispered. You were born in November 1999? He asked. Yes. So they gave me away in May 2000 when you were about 6 months old. I did the math. They must have been pregnant with me when they made the decision to place Daniel for adoption, or maybe they just found out. Either way, they'd chosen to keep the typically developing baby and give away the one with Down syndrome. I want to meet you, Daniel said suddenly. Can we meet? Of course. Yes. Where do you live? Eugene. About 2 hours from Portland. I can drive down this weekend, I offered. Okay. He sounded smaller now. Younger. Emma? Are you going to talk to them? Our parents? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I did know. By Friday, I'd made my decision. I showed up at my parents' house at 6 p.m., right when I knew they'd both be home from work, but before dinner. I used my key again, walking in without knocking. They were in the kitchen. Mom was chopping vegetables, and Dad was reading something on his iPad at the table. They both looked up with surprise when I entered. Emma? Mom's face lit up. What a nice surprise. Are you staying for dinner? We need to talk, I said flatly. Something in my tone made Dad set down his iPad. What's wrong? I pulled out my phone and opened it to the DNA match. I turned the screen toward them. Who is Daniel Mitchell? The blood drained from my mother's face. My father went very still. Emma? Mom started. No. I cut her off. Let me tell you what I know, and then you can explain. I know that you had a son named Daniel in March 1998. I know that you gave him up for adoption in May 2000 because he has Down syndrome. I know that you've been sending money to his adoptive parents for 20 years. And I know that you did all of this without ever telling me I have a brother. Mom sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. How did you? Dad began. He found me through DNA testing, I said. He reached out to me, asked why you kept me but not him. And you want to know the really great part? I didn't have an answer because you never told me he existed. Emma, please sit down, Mom said, her voice shaking. Let us explain. I'm not sure there's an explanation that makes this okay, I said, but I sat. Dad spoke first. You have to understand. We were young, 23 and 24. We'd just had Daniel, and we were still figuring out how to be parents. And then the doctors told us he had Down syndrome, and they laid out all these potential health complications, developmental delays, the amount of care he'd need. He rubbed his face. We panicked. We thought we were doing the right thing, Mom added quickly. We found Mark and Patricia through an adoption agency that specializes in placing children with special needs. They had experience, resources, training, everything we didn't have. You were pregnant with me when you gave him away, I said. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Yes, so you knew you could handle one baby, just not one with Down syndrome. That's not fair, Dad said sharply. Isn't it? I shot back. That's exactly what happened. You had a baby with special needs, decided it was too hard, and gave him away right around the time you had a normal baby to replace him. We didn't replace him, Mom said, crying openly now. Emma, we've thought about Daniel every single day for 25 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone. We've grieved him. We've wondered if we made the right choice. And yet you never once mentioned him to me, I said. I grew up thinking I was an only child. Do you have any idea how isolating that was? I always wanted a sibling, and it turns out I had one all along. We wanted to tell you, Dad said, so many times. But how do you explain something like that to a child? By the way, honey, you have a brother we gave away? When you were little, it seemed too complicated. And then as you got older, We'd kept the secret for so long that it felt impossible to come clean. We were ashamed. Good, I said coldly. You should be ashamed. The harshness of my words landed like a physical blow. My mother flinched. My father looked like I'd slapped him, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone again and showed them the photos of the bank statements. Let's talk about the money. Dad closed his eyes. Emma, $120,000, I said, my voice rising. That's how much I owe in student loans. Do you remember sitting me down before college and telling me you couldn't help? That money was too tight, that I'd have to figure it out on my own? We were helping with Daniel's care, Mom tried. You were paying for the son you were too ashamed to keep, I was shouting now. And you let me, your daughter, the child you actually raised, go into massive debt rather than admitting he existed. Do you have any idea what those loans have done to my life? I can't afford to move out of my tiny studio apartment. I can't save for retirement. I put off going to the dentist because I can't afford the copay. And the whole time, you've been sending $1,500 a month to Daniel's family. We had an obligation to him, Dad said. We couldn't just abandon him completely, but you could abandon me financially? I laughed bitterly. That makes total sense. It's not the same. You're right. It's not the same. Because Daniel got money and a family who actually wanted, and I got lies and debt. That was unfair, and I knew it even as I said it. My parents had wanted, they'd loved, but I was too angry to care about being fair. Mom was sobbing into her hands. We're so sorry, Emma. We made a terrible mistake. We were young and scared, and we've regretted it every day since. We thought sending money was the least we could do. We wanted to make sure he had everything he needed. He's a person, I said. He's a person with thoughts and feelings, and you threw him away because he had an extra chromosome. And now he knows he has a sister who was born right around the time his birth parents decided they didn't want him. Do you have any idea what that must feel like for him? The silence was deafening. I'm meeting him tomorrow, I said, standing up, in Eugene. I'm going to have coffee with my brother, the brother you never told me about. And then I'm going to figure out what kind of relationship I can have with all of you moving forward, if any. Emma, please. Mom stood too, reaching for me. Don't leave like this. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. How did you expect this to end, Mom? Did you think this secret would just stay buried forever? Did you think about what would happen when DNA testing became common? Or did you just not care? Of course we care, Dad said, his voice breaking. We care about both of you. We always have. Just not enough, I said. Not enough to keep him. Not enough to tell me the truth. Not enough to actually treat me like your financial responsibility when it came to college. I left before they could respond, their protests following me out the door. The drive to Eugene on Saturday morning felt surreal. I was going to meet my brother who I'd learned existed less than a week ago. My brother who my parents had given away for being imperfect. We'd agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the University of Oregon. I got there 15 minutes early and ordered a latte I was too nervous to drink. When Daniel walked in, I knew him immediately. He had my father's nose, my mother's smile. He was shorter than average with the characteristic facial features of Down syndrome, the almond-shaped eyes, the flatter bridge of his nose. He wore jeans and a duck sweatshirt, and he looked terrified. I stood up, and for a moment we just stared at each other. Then Daniel's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. You look like Mom, he said. Our mom. The pictures I've seen. You've seen pictures of her? I asked, surprised. Mark and Patricia had photos from the adoption. They always wanted me to know what my birth parents looked like. He paused. Can I hug you? Yes, I said. And then he was hugging me, and I was hugging him back, and we were both crying in the middle of a coffee shop while confused college students gave us a wide berth. I have a sister, Daniel said into my shoulder. I really have a sister. You really do? I managed. We sat down, coffees forgotten, and just looked at each other. Tell me about you, I said. I want to know everything. And he did. Daniel told me about growing up in Eugene with Mark and Patricia, who he clearly adored. He told me about his job at a local grocery store where he'd worked in the produce section for 3 years. He told me about his apartment. He lived in a supported living facility where he had his own place but staff nearby if he needed help. He told me about his girlfriend, Melissa, who also had Down syndrome and worked at the same grocery store. We've been together for 2 years, he said proudly. We want to get married someday. He told me about his hobbies. He was learning to play piano. He volunteered at an animal shelter, just like our mother, I thought with a strange pang. And he loved cooking shows. What about you? He asked. What's your life like? I told him about my work as a graphic designer, about my tiny apartment in Portland, about my crushing student loan debt. I found myself telling him about my ex-boyfriend, about my friends, about my dreams of maybe starting my own design firm someday. You're really talented? Daniel asked. I do okay, I said. I bet you're amazing, he said with such earnest confidence that I had to smile. We talked for 3 hours. At some point, we ordered food. The coffee shop transitioned from breakfast to lunch crowd, and we barely noticed. Can I ask you something? Daniel said finally, his voice dropping. Do you think they gave me away because of the Down syndrome? Or was there another reason? I'd been dreading this question. I could lie, soften it somehow, but Daniel deserved the truth. I think the Down syndrome was the main reason, I said gently. Based on what I found, and what they told me when I confronted them, they were young and scared, and they didn't think they could handle raising a child with special needs. Daniel nodded slowly. Mark and Patricia always said my birth parents weren't bad people. They said they just weren't ready. Maybe that's true, I said. But I also think they made a choice that hurt you. And that wasn't fair to you. Do you think," he hesitated, "do you think they're sorry? That they regret it?" I thought about my mother's tears. My father's broken voice. "Yes," I said honestly. "I think they regret it every day. I think they're haunted by it. But that doesn't make what they did okay." Daniel was quiet for a long time. "I had a good life," he said finally. "Mark and Patricia are great parents. They never made me feel like I was too much or too difficult. They celebrated everything I did. They pushed me to be independent, but were always there when I needed them. I'm happy. I'm so glad," I said, and meant it. "But I still wish I'd known about you sooner," he added. "I always wanted a sibling. I used to pretend I had a secret brother or sister somewhere." He laughed sadly. "Turns out I did. I wanted a sibling too," I admitted. "I used to beg our parents for a brother or sister. They always said it wasn't in the cards. The irony wasn't lost on either of us." "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "With you and me, I mean." "And with our birth parents?" "With you and me? I want to be in your life if you want me in yours. I want to actually be your sister." His smile was brilliant. "I want that too. As for our birth parents," I sighed. "I don't know. I'm so angry at them right now. For what they did to you. For lying to me. For the money situation. I don't know if I can forgive that. Would you?" Daniel bit his lip. "Would you ever want them to meet me? All of us together?" The thought made my stomach churn. "Maybe someday, but not yet. I need time to process all of this." "That's okay," Daniel said quickly. "I understand. I need time too." We exchanged numbers, made plans to meet again in 2 weeks. As we were leaving, Daniel hugged me again. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being angry for me. For caring that what happened to me wasn't right. Mark and Patricia love me, and they've always validated my feelings about being adopted. But to have my actual sister be angry on my behalf, it means a lot." Over the next few months, Daniel and I built a relationship. We texted daily, met up every other weekend. I drove to Eugene, or he took the bus to Portland. I met Mark and Patricia, who were wonderful and welcoming, if a bit wary of the situation. I met Melissa, Daniel's girlfriend, who was delightful and clearly adored my brother. I introduced Daniel to my friends. I brought him to my apartment, and he helped me rearrange my furniture because he had better design sense. He did. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, shared stories about our lives. He really was my brother, and I'd missed 26 years of knowing. My parents called and texted constantly. I mostly ignored them. When I did respond, it was brief and cold. 3 months after that first confrontation, my mother showed up at my apartment. "I'm not stalking you," she said when I opened the door. Please, can we talk? Really talk?" I almost said no, but something in her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the weight she'd clearly lost, the exhaustion, made me step aside. We sat on my couch, an awkward distance between us. "I've been going to therapy," Mom said. "Your father and I both have. We found someone who specializes in adoption trauma and birth parent grief. We're trying to understand why we did what we did and how we can begin to make amends." "Good for you," I said, not bothering to hide the sarcasm. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. What we did to Daniel was inexcusable. What we did to you, lying, letting you take on all that debt, that was inexcusable too." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded. "I need to understand. How could you give away your child? How could you lie to me for my entire life? How could you let me go into debt when you had money you were sending to him?" Mom took a shaky breath. "When the doctors told us Daniel had Down syndrome, they focused on everything he might never do. All the delays, the potential health problems, the challenges. They made it sound impossible. And we were so young, Emma. We hadn't planned for a baby at all. I got pregnant accidentally and we'd just gotten married. We were barely keeping our heads above water financially. But you figured it out with me," I pointed out. "By the time you were born, we were a little more stable. Your dad had gotten a promotion. We'd had time to grow up a little." And she stopped, tears streaming down her face. "And you were easier. I know that's horrible to say, but it's true. You didn't need special therapies or medical interventions. You hit all your milestones. You were this easy, happy baby, and taking care of you felt manageable in a way taking care of Daniel hadn't. So you gave away the hard child and kept the easy one. When you put it like that, it sounds monstrous." "It was monstrous, Mom," she nodded, sobbing openly now. I know it was. And I've had to live with that knowledge every single day. I gave away my baby because he wasn't perfect. What kind of mother does that? The kind who should have told the truth," I said. "If you felt so guilty, why not at least be honest with me?" "Shame," she said simply. "Pure shame. How do you admit to your child that you abandoned her brother? What if you looked at us differently? What if you didn't love us anymore? What if you told other people and they judged us?" She laughed bitterly, "Which is exactly what's happening now anyway." "And the money? The college situation? That's harder to explain," Mom said. "We felt obligated to support Daniel financially. We'd given him up, but we still felt responsible for his care. Mark and Patricia never demanded money, but we offered, and they accepted it to help with his therapy and medical needs. And then it became habit, just part of our budget. While I was your actual responsibility," I said. "You are, and we failed you. We should have told you about Daniel from the beginning. We should have found a way to help with both your education and his care. We should have been honest. We made mistake after mistake, and we compounded each one with more lies." We sat in silence for a moment. "I've been seeing Daniel," I said finally, "every other week. We're getting to know each other." Mom's head snapped up. "You have? How is he?" "He's wonderful. He's kind and funny, and he has a great life. Mark and Patricia are good people who actually wanted him and gave him the home he deserved." The implication hung heavy in the air. "Can you ever forgive us?" Mom asked quietly. I thought about it, Really thought about it. Could I forgive parents who'd given away their child for being disabled? Who'd lied to me for 26 years? Who'd let me struggle financially while sending money to ease their guilty consciences? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But not today. Today I'm still too angry. That's fair, Mom said. She stood to leave, then paused. Does he hate us? No, I said. He doesn't hate you. He's hurt and confused, but he doesn't hate you. He's actually more forgiving than I am, which tells you something about the kind of person he is, the kind of person he grew up to be, despite you. Mom nodded, fresh tears falling. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I think about him every day. Tell him I'm proud of him, even though I have no right to be. After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, thinking. 6 months later, Daniel asked me the question I'd been dreading. Do you think I could meet them? Our parents? We were at my apartment, making dinner together. He'd gotten confident enough with public transportation to visit me regularly, and our relationship had blossomed into something real and genuine. Are you sure you want to? I asked carefully. I think so, he said, chopping vegetables with careful precision. I'm not trying to replace Mark and Patricia. They're my parents, and nothing will change that. But I'm curious. I want to understand where I came from. And he paused. I want them to see that I'm okay, that giving me away didn't ruin my life. Daniel, you don't owe them that. I know, but maybe I owe it to myself. So I set it up. A neutral location, a park in Portland on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Daniel wanted Mark and Patricia there for support, and I insisted on coming too. When Daniel and I arrived with Mark and Patricia, my parents were already there, sitting on a bench. They stood when they saw us, and I watched my mother's face crumble when she saw Daniel for the first time in 25 years. Hi, Daniel said, walking up to them with the confidence I'd come to admire. I'm Daniel. I know, Mom whispered. I know who you are. You look just like your father. Dad couldn't seem to speak at all. He just stared at Daniel, tears running down his face. This is Mark and Patricia, Daniel said, gesturing to his adoptive parents. My parents. The words clearly landed like a punch, but to their credit, my parents just nodded. Thank you, Dad said to Mark and Patricia. Thank you for giving him the life we couldn't. He gave us a wonderful life too, Patricia said warmly, her arm around Daniel's shoulders. He's the best thing that ever happened to us. We all sat down at a picnic table. My biological parents on one side, Daniel, Mark, Patricia, and me on the other, like opposing teams. Maybe that's what we were. I have questions, Daniel said. Is that okay? Of course, Mom said. Ask us anything. Why did you really give me away? Daniel asked. Was it just the Down syndrome? My parents exchanged glances. Yes, Dad said finally. Primarily, yes. We were scared and overwhelmed, and we didn't think we could give you the life you deserve. We were wrong. We know that now. We should have tried harder. Should have sought support, education, resources. But we were young and we panicked, and we made a decision that we've regretted every day since. Did you ever think about me? Daniel asked. Every day, Mom said. Every single day. Your birthday? Every March 15th, we always acknowledged it privately. We wondered what you were doing, if you were happy, if you were healthy. We sent money because it was the only way we could still parent you from a distance. Did you love me? The question was so quiet, so vulnerable. Yes, both my parents said in unison. We loved you so much. Mom continued. That's why this is so complicated. We didn't give you away because we didn't love you. We gave you away because we were cowards who didn't think we were strong enough to love you the way you needed. Daniel absorbed this. Then he asked, did you know about Emma when you gave me away? Yes, Dad admitted. Your mother was pregnant. We didn't know yet that you would have a sibling, but we knew there was another baby coming. And that made it easier to give me away? The question was so perceptive, so cutting. Maybe, Dad said, his voice breaking. Maybe knowing we'd still be parents made it easier to tell ourselves the adoption was the right choice. I don't know. I've asked myself that question 1,000 times, and I still don't have a good answer. We sat there for 2 hours. Daniel asked questions. My parents answered, honestly and painfully. Mark and Patricia occasionally interjected with their own perspective. I mostly watched, my heart breaking and rebuilding over and over. At the end, Daniel stood up. Thank you for meeting me, he said. I don't know what happens from here. I don't know if we'll have a relationship or not, but I needed to see you, to understand. Mom started, then stopped. Can we maybe do this again sometime? If you want to? Daniel looked at Mark and Patricia, who nodded. Then he looked at me. I shrugged. This was his decision. Maybe, Daniel said. I'll think about it. As we walked away, Daniel took my hand. You okay? He asked. I should be asking you that. I'm okay, he said. It hurts, but I'm okay. Mark and Patricia loved me enough for everyone, and now I have you too. Yeah, I said, squeezing his hand. You definitely have me. It's been a year now since that DNA test result changed my life. Daniel and I have a relationship that's become one of the most important in my life. We see each other twice a month, text nearly every day, and he's become genuinely close with my friends. My parents and I are in family therapy. It's slow, painful work. Some days I feel like I can't forgive them. Other days I understand a little bit how fear and immaturity and societal prejudice against disability could lead to such a catastrophic decision. Understanding doesn't mean excusing, but it helps. They've apologized to Daniel multiple times. He's more gracious about it than I am. He's even agreed to occasional dinners with them, always with Mark and Patricia present. I go sometimes, though it's still awkward and painful. My parents offered to help with my student loans, to start making payments the way they'd been doing for Daniel. I told them I'd think about it. I'm not sure if accepting would be allowing them to buy forgiveness or accepting overdue support. Maybe both. Last month, Daniel asked if I'd be a bridesmaid at his wedding. He and Melissa are getting married next spring, and he wants me standing beside him. Of course, I said. I'd be honored. Will you be okay if our birth parents are there? He asked. I want to invite them. They're part of my story, even if it's complicated. It's your wedding, I said. You should have whoever you want there. The truth is, I'm still working through my anger. Some days it's a dull ache, easily ignored. Other days it's a fresh wound that feels impossible to heal. I'm angry at what they did to Dan. I'm angry at the lies. I'm angry at the financial burden they let me shoulder alone. But I'm also grateful, in a twisted way, that their decision led Daniel to Mark and Patricia, who loved him unconditionally and gave him a beautiful life. I'm grateful that DNA testing exists so I could find my brother. I'm grateful for the relationship we're building. The other day, Daniel and I were at a restaurant, and the waiter asked if we were siblings. Yes, we both said immediately, and then grinned at each other. You have the same smile, the waiter commented. After he left, Daniel said, we do have the same smile. Isn't that cool? Yeah, I agreed. It really is. We may have lost 26 years. We may never get those back, but we have now. And that's something. Some families are born, some are built, some are rebuilt from broken pieces. Ours is all three, and somehow, impossibly, we're figuring it out.